What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. Well, yesterday we did have that big PlayStation showcase that certainly got a reaction online, just wasn't really the one that Sony was expecting. We'll go over all the announcements, though, in that event here today. Also, we are going to be talking about disaster that struck at Embracer Group as they did report some of their financial results, as well as a massive deal that appears to have fallen through at the last minute. And we'll also be talking about Prince of Persia: Sands of Time Remake. We got an update and some more information around the game, which can be seen as both good and bad news. So if you guys enjoy the video, make sure you like it and subscribe if you're new here to the Spawn Wave channel. And we're going to start today with Dead Island 2, which is a game that came out and kind of flew under the radar really since then, specifically for the state that it released in, which is actually pretty good. It performs well at 4K 60, and it didn't really have any notable bugs or glitches or issues at launch, which has become more and more common. And it appears the audience is actually responding to this with it getting good results in terms of sales. You can see this posted up. This is over on WCCF Tech, quoting Embracer Group saying, "Dambuster Studios and PlayOn released Dead Island 2 on April 21st, and it is encouraging to see the positive reception from both critics and players. Dead Island 2 sold 1 million units in its first weekend, so April 21st to the 23rd, exceeding management expectations. Measured over the first 7 days of the sale period, it has become Deep Silver and PlayOn's biggest launch in history in both units and revenue. I am happy to state that the game has now reached a sellout of well over 2 million units, and they seem very happy with those results. I know we talk about how some of these companies are looking for 5, 10, even 15 million sold. You know, sometimes the game comes out and with the development issues that Dead Island 2 has faced, getting 2 million units, they seem pretty happy, and that did happen fairly quickly. And I know people looked at the pricing around at $70 is worth picking up. Well, I figure by the end of this year, it'll most likely be on some sort of sale, and at that point, yeah, I'd say it's definitely worth picking up and trying. Also, we had just talked about how the 3DS had a bit of an issue because Nintendo decided to update it out of nowhere, and it seemed to break an exploit that was being used to open up and soft mod the system. Well, you can see this post up over on Twitter. I mean, almost right away, just about hats off to the 3DS modding community. This post up by Koopa saying, "The 11.17 patch that dropped today has already been circumvented for the EU, Japanese region codes consoles with a fix, the US one coming soon." And this is something that Nintendo will face if they decide to keep updating the system for whatever reason, because since it's considered legacy at this point for them, is it will just be figured out and worked around by the community every single time. It was happening even when the system was current for Nintendo or even Sony or whoever at this point. So yeah, when you have these updates just kind of pop up, there's certainly a rush online to figure it out, and good to see that they were able to. Again, considering the eShop's been shut down and prices for 3DS games have continued to go up, it's at least nice to know that there's a way to soft mod a system that Nintendo really doesn't have any interest in supporting anymore. Oh, and we did get a release date for Ys 10, which is a game I've been keeping an eye on because I enjoyed Ys 8. Ys 9 was alright, but from what we've seen through different gameplay clips and screenshots, Ys 10 is looking pretty good, and we can see this post over on Gamatsu where they say Ys 10 Nordics will launch for PS5, PS4, and Switch on September 28th in Japan. There will also be a limited edition that's available, but the thing about this is it's coming out in Japan. Typically, what we see from Falcom is it might take 1.5 to 2 years for it then to make its way out of Japan and release, for example, in North America. I'd like to think that they will have this lined up for a holiday 2024 release in the US, and I'll be picking it up when they do that. But good to see we at least have a release date for the start of the release cadence that they have in Japan. So, hey, you could also technically import it if you'd like, but for me, I'm gonna hold out and hope that we get that 2024 holiday release. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with that PlayStation showcase. Went on for a little over an hour, and I counted roughly 34 different games that were highlighted here, and it ranged from third parties to indies to first parties from Sony, even some of the newly acquired first party studios. But after this showcase wrapped up, there was certainly a reaction online that wasn't necessarily like excitement, people being blown away, overwhelmed with the amount of incredible announcements. There's actually a bit of concern and even frustration, which we'll circle back to here. First, though, Let's start at the top for the showcase with Haven. Haven showed up immediately. Like before Jim Ryan, I think Haven was there. It's a live service game, of course. We knew this, but it's called Fair Games, and it looks like kind of a heist team shooter, and it is coming out for the PlayStation 5 and PC. So we are seeing that with these live service titles from Sony. It is making its way to PC day one alongside of the PlayStation 5. We've talked about this at length. It makes sense considering they need to hold a high concurrent player count for these games to make sense and have a long tail when it comes to its support and scheduling. Helldivers 2 was then shown PS5 and PC. I think the first one was also on PC though, so 2023 coming out this year. I didn't really get as into Helldivers 1, but I know there was an audience around it, so good to see getting that second one here. Immortals of Avium was shown again. That is coming out July 20th. Ghost Runner 2 looked pretty good. That's 2023. And then we had, to me, what was one of the standouts from the show, Phantom Blade Zero. It looks really, really cool with the combat between multiple enemies. Still kind of leaning into that samurai look and all of this, which to me is fine. I'm not getting tired of these games, but I really enjoyed some of the fighting, choreography and stuff. Looked a bit scripted at times, but if it actually flows like that in combat in real time, it might have something here. Then we had Sword of the Sea, which kind of looked like you were sort of hoverboarding around in the desert there. It's from the Journey's developer, Giant Squid, so definitely keep an eye on that one. The Talos Principle 2, that's coming out 2023. We have Neva, that's 2024. Cat Quest. Did not expect to see a Cat Quest game in a Sony showcase, but here we are. That's Pirates of the Caribbean. It's 2024, PS5 and PS4, which, by the way, the PS4 does show up a couple of times here. Square Enix was next up with their take on Splatoon. All right, called Foam Stars. Okay, but it's definitely Square Enix noticing how popular the Splatoon franchise is and want to have their own spin on it to see if it can work out in a live service environment. And if it doesn't, you know what? Hey, they'll shut it down in a year. But then we have the Plucky Squire, which looks great. They just basically wanted to remind us that it's still coming out this year. No release date, just 2023. Teardown, reminding me very much of Minecraft, I guess. That's coming out on the PS5 in 2023. Then we got to the big time announcement. Everyone was really crossing their fingers with all the rumors and speculation and leaks going on. Metal Gear Solid 3 is indeed getting that remake, and it's named Metal Gear Solid Delta Snake Eater. I asked this question, would they keep 3 in the title? It didn't make a lot of sense for them to do that. Instead, though, Metal Gear Solid Delta. But that is on the PlayStation 5. It is also coming to the Xbox and PC. Then there's also a Master Collection for Metal Gear Solid, which they said is the first kind of addition or SKU in, I guess, a lineup of remastered collections, so keep an eye out on that one. But 2023 for the collection, and that's going to have Metal Gear Solid 1, 2, and 3, so exciting stuff there. Then we have Towers of Azkaban, that's 2024. Final Fantasy 16 decided to appear again, June 22nd. Still no word on that demo. I guess, pinpointing Summer Game Fest for that one, so buckle up for another trailer for Final Fantasy 16. Alan Wake 2, October 17th, 2023, looks good, but the thing that I think caught people off guard here, it's a digital-only release. They will not be putting out any kind of physical copy, but according to them, that's enabling them to keep the price at $60 for consoles and then $50 on PC. But for preservation or people who like having that physical collection, not great there. It does make me wonder if this is a trend that will continue with big games in the next couple years, just opting for a digital release. Assassin's Creed Mirage, that's October 12th. And it is PS5, PS4, of course, on Xbox as well and PC. And they showed off the gameplay for this. It does look like a more classic Assassin's Creed from like Assassin's Creed 2, for example. And I like what I'm seeing here. I will be picking this one up October 12th because it got kind of tedious, I will say, and almost overwhelming with the RPG elements they've leaned into with things like Odyssey and most recently Valhalla, so it'll be a nice back to basics with Assassin's Creed Mirage. Then we have Revenant Hill, that's PS5 and PS4. Grand Blue Fantasy Relink, 2023. They said winter at least this time, so I guess they're getting closer to that release date, PS5 and PS4. Capcom decided to show us Street Fighter 6 again. It's coming out next week, June Second, Ultros. It looked like a 2D side-scroller. Pretty cool there with the art style. It's 2024. Perfect World Entertainment decided to show off Tower of Fantasy. Then we had a pretty good look at Dragon's Dogma 2, which, yeah, I'm on board with this one. I mean, before we saw it, they announced it with a shirt the person was wearing, so at least here we saw more of the game, so exciting stuff on that one. Five Nights at Freddy's Help Wanted 2. Late 2023. Then we got into a section for PSVR 2 games. We have Resident Evil 4 PSVR 2. That is currently in development. We already knew about it, but again, I guess they just wanted to tell us. Arizona Sunshine 2. It's a first-person zombie game coming out 2023. Then we have Crossfire Sierra Squad. This is from Smilegate. They were part of Crossfire X on the Xbox, so we'll see how this one goes. A first-person military shooter, as you'd expect. Then we had Synapse. That's July 4th. Beat Saber. It's out now. Awesome game. If you've never played it and you have a PSVR 2, I recommend checking it out. It's also on other headsets like the Rift 2, for example. Then Bungie showed up. They did talk about a Destiny 2 showcase. That's August 22nd, titled The Final Shape. But they did showcase something that we have heard speculation and rumors on, and they are indeed reviving and rebooting Marathon. Now, apparently it's an extraction shooter, but Marathon is from way back in the mid-90s for Bungie, is like basically their start, and then they, of course, moved over to Halo, and the rest is history there, but them going back to their roots and bringing Marathon up to current times, I am interested. I will be keeping an eye on that one. It's also nice to see Bungie do something other than Destiny. We then had Firewalk show off a title card and a very brief CGI trailer with a sandwich involved. It's called Concord, 2024, PS5 and PC. It is a shame because we saw these CG trailers that showed little to nothing at times for both Haven and Firewalk, and I was hoping they would have had a bigger presence here, considering Sony bought both of these studios before they put their games out, but I guess we're going to have to wait a little longer to see what exactly they have for us when it comes to gameplay. Gran Turismo, not the game, the movie trailer apparently was here, so there you go. Jim Ryan then appeared on screen, announcing the streaming device that was codenamed, Project Q internally, and this is going to be specifically a remote play device for your PlayStation 5. It was heavily rumored, there was reports on this, and it does indeed look to be real, which keep an eye on this one. I'll make a video on this on the second channel a bit here, but this was the one that seemed the most far-fetched out of all the different rumors, and it is correct. So you see that, maybe that slim PS5 with a detachable disc drive, maybe that PS5 Pro is a thing. PlayStation earbuds were also shown off here. And then we had the big close, which was Spider-Man 2, an extended gameplay. I mean, it was like 10 minutes of gameplay. And it looks great. They showed Kraven in the beginning, who's obviously going to be one of the big villains for Spider-Man and Miles to fight against, as well as the black suit Spider-Man that I think has a pretty good take on it in terms of the visual appeal. It's not just all smooth, it's kind of roughed up around the sides and everything. And Peter was definitely much more aggressive in this gameplay, as you would expect when he's kind of overtaken by the symbiote there. But it did look kind of similar to Prototype a bit there, right? And you kind of expect that with the symbiote suit there and all of this, having all these arms and tentacles and stuff coming out, grabbing different people. You do switch between Peter and Miles seemingly mid-game. They have like these wingsuits that are flying around. You can create web lines when you're trying to stealth your way around as Miles there. The chase scene looked great. But then we get to the end. Fall 2023. Still no release date for Spider-Man, or Spider-Man 2, which is a little surprising considering there were talks that it could come out in September. The fact that they are not able to put that release date out now makes me think October or November for Spider-Man 2, most likely. But as I mentioned, there was certainly a lot of people who seemed let down by this presentation. I think some of the big aspects here, well, one would be just CGI trailers all over the place, very little gameplay or even understanding of what some of these new IPs actually are. Like the Firewalk's the weirdest one to me. I don't even know why they decided to show just a title card for it, and it's coming out next year. But then even on top of that, there seemed to be a lot of no-shows for Sony that people were hoping to hear from, like Naughty Dog when it comes to the Factions 2 multiplayer. No Bluepoint at all here. Team Asobi, unfortunately nothing there. Twisted Metal. I mean, there were a lot of first-party developers that people were really going to this hoping to see to kind of set up that second phase of the PlayStation 5, but it seems that we're gonna have to wait maybe till the end of this year for another state of play or a showcase to get a couple of those titles at least pushed out there. To me, though, it was just an average showing overall, which Unfortunately, expectations were incredibly high for this because it's been nearly 2 years since they had their last big showcase, and it certainly did not live up to the hype and expectations that were built up online, or even just the amount of time since that last one. And Sony certainly set the bar high for themselves with a lot of the talk they've done for their own first-party studios. So again, maybe we'll see a presentation from them before the end of this year to continue setting up the second half of the PlayStation 5. But for me, this is just an okay showing overall. I'll give my letter grade later on because that was the poll question. Next up, let's talk about a devastating blow to Embracer Group. They did talk about some of their financials yesterday, which you can see this was posted up over on Twitter, giving us a very basic understanding, saying Embracer Group Q4 and full year report, fiscal year 22 and 23 is published. Net sales increased by 79%. So you see a net sales increase of 79%. You feel like, wow, that's pretty good. But then you look at their stock, it plummeted 44%. If you go to the 5-day, I mean, it is just a straight drop down, and it's not good. I mean, cutting their overall value in half immediately in one day. And you might be wondering, okay, what happened here? Well, when I mentioned devastating blow, I'm not kidding. Take a look at Axios here. $2 billion partnership deal falls through for Embracer Group. In fact, the wild thing about this, it appeared to fall through hours before the CEO appeared in a live stream discussing like their recent financial results and kind of their outlook. This from the Embracer CEO Lars Wingfors, who says all documentation was finalized and ready to go as of yesterday. We asked for the execution of the agreement before Q4 announcement. However, late last night we received a negative outcome from the counterparty, and the amount of money that was involved here, they were expecting in terms of value and cash flow, was nearly $2 billion. And he just seemed out of it, distraught. Didn't seem like he wanted to be there at all during that live stream, and you can't really blame him. I mean, 4 or 5 hours before that, he heard that their company was going to miss out on upwards of a $2 billion contract. And people are trying to figure out who that contract would have been for. And you got to start thinking of big companies that Embracer would be able to lend out talent to or develop around an intellectual property. And I would have to think Amazon, although they are working with Amazon now, so you kind of rule them out a bit there. It could have been, I guess, Google. Also, you could have seen multiple deals come together for Microsoft, as they're already working with Crystal Dynamics with them. But it's hard to say who would have rolled in with a $2 billion deal had been negotiating and then that falling apart. Could have been Marvel. I mean, Marvel would have probably had a bunch of intellectual properties that they could have worked with Embracer, considering they picked up studios from Square Enix that has had experience with some of Marvel's previous games. But then on top of that, things didn't get any better when the CEO was asked about that Knights of the Old Republic remake, like what's going on. There's a lot of news about there being issues behind the scenes, it maybe even being canceled, and all the CEO could muster was no comment. That tells you all I need to know about that one. Sorry, Knights of the Old Republic fans, it doesn't look like things are going to go well for that remake anytime soon, if at all. But certainly a rough day, to say the least, for Embracer Group. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about that Prince of Persia Sands of Time remake. It was really exciting when we were going into that Ubisoft Forward. We were sort of hearing like speculation, rumors, and even a leak on Ubisoft's own website that it was happening. Then we saw it, and it wasn't what we were hoping for. Our expectations were at least a little bit up there for a Sands of Time remake, and I don't think the trailer delivered. And in fact, it got to the point where it was taken away from that studio and given to Ubisoft Montreal. Well, we did have an interview with some of the developers and lead at Ubisoft Montreal around Prince of Persia Sands of Time remake, and they gave us an idea as to where it is currently in development. We can see this posted up. This is over on Ubisoft's own news website, where this is from Jean-Francis Naud, who says, in terms of the development stage, we're in conception right now, which, yeah, it means they're basically back to square one, and it's kind of what we heard, that they were rebooting the remake. This just confirms that they are indeed doing that. Now, they do have a very good interview here explaining that they have that history because Ubisoft Montreal is where Prince of Persia Sands of Time, the original one, was made. So they have that history and that understanding, and they talk about having to more or less modernize different parts of it, whether it's the movement or the combat, just to fit in with what we have now versus what we had, 20 years ago? So the good news here is that Ubisoft seems to care enough about this project to do something that's very expensive. Reboot it, scrap what they had worked years on, send it off to a studio that's very talented within Ubisoft Montreal, and work on it from the ground up, which I hope means that it will eventually turn into that big-time remake that we were hoping to see. So the problem now is it's gonna be a while. Probably 4 years. So here's hoping that when they do show it off again, probably towards the end of the PS5 and the Xbox Series life, it was worth the wait. And before we go to the comment of the day, we're gonna take a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday, where I asked, give the PlayStation Showcase a grade. C was the leading option here at 44%, then B at 25%, D at 12%, A at 10%, then F at 8%. I think I'm right there at like a C+. I mean, there were a lot of games. I mentioned like 34 of them. However, not really a strong first-party showing from Sony here, which is what you typically expect going into the PlayStation Showcase, and a lot of their first-party developers just had CG trailers and title cards, with Insomniac being the big standout with actual gameplay for their game. In fact, a lot of the games that were shown here are also on other platforms. Xbox decided to put a magnifying glass on that with their tweet here, just mentioning that many of those games, like Metal Gear Solid 3, which great to see that remake, is also going to Xbox. So that's the biggest thing here. Is it was great to see a lot of games, but for Sony, who is really big on having exclusive games for their hardware at their PS5, they didn't really deliver that much. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day, as you're seeing here. This is from Undercover, saying, I can't believe we're at a point where not having a day one patch is newsworthy. Here's the interesting thing about this, and I was kind of thinking about it as we saw Alan Wake 2, that just being digital. You won't really worry about day one patches at all when it's an all digital landscape and future for gaming. Like Tears of the Kingdom got an update, like a patch before it came out, and everyone who had preloaded or downloaded it on the first, like the day it came out, didn't even know it. So technically, we'll get to a point where day one patches will be a thing of the past, unless you still have old game discs laying around, in which case, have fun having to download that 10 or 12 gigabyte patch to fix the game, basically. Provided those servers are still up, of course. And ladies and gentlemen, that's gonna do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today, whether it's the PlayStation Showcase, what were your thoughts on it, your favorite games, your disappointments, and then also, what about Embracer Group seeing a devastating blow? Who do you think had that deal with them for $2 billion that fell out at the last minute? And then also, what about Prince of Persia Sands of Time Remake? When do you think that game will end up coming out? Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.